In the soft light of the morning at Whispering Pines Wildlife Sanctuary, 3 bobcat cubs were rescued from the illegal wildlife trade. Sadly, their mother didn't survive the ordeal. When the cubs arrived, they were very withdrawn and refused to eat, clearly affected by the loss of their mother. As conventional methods seemed to fall short and hope started to fade, a bold idea came to light. The sanctuary decided to introduce Daisy, a gentle rescue dog, as a surrogate mother. Could this dog, a new mother herself, be the key to saving these wild cubs? What started as a desperate move soon blossomed into an extraordinary bond, challenging all expectations and reshaping wildlife rehabilitation practices. This heartwarming story is about an unlikely friendship, as Daisy the rescue dog steps in to nurture the struggling bobcats. Before we dive deeper into this touching tale, if you enjoy these stories, remember to give a like and subscribe if you haven't already. That way, you won't miss any future stories that captivate your heart. On that fateful morning, as the sun began to rise over the mountains, Emily Johnson received a call that would change everything. With 30 years of experience in wildlife rehabilitation, she believed she had seen it all. But the urgency in Ranger Mike's voice let her know this situation was different. "We've got 3 bobcat kittens," he said, his tone reflecting panic. They were confiscated from someone trying to sell them at a truck stop near Tucson. The mother didn't make it. She was very dehydrated and injured when they found her. Emily felt a tight grip around her heart as she listened. Another victim of the thriving illegal pet trade in Arizona. "How old are they?" she asked, her mind already racing with thoughts about their care. "They can't be more than 4 weeks old." "They won't eat, Emily. The vet says they're failing fast." 30 minutes later, Emily found herself in her small examination room, looking down at 3 little fur bundles. Each one was small enough to fit in her palm, with blue-gray eyes that were open yet unfocused. Their tiny bodies shook from fear and hunger. The smallest, a female with a noticeable white patch on her ear, made a soft, plaintive sound that broke the stillness of the sanctuary. "Oh, little ones," Emily whispered, gently reaching out to stroke the tiny kitten with her finger. The baby flinched and hissed weakly in response. "I know you miss your mama. I'm so sorry." For the next 3 days, Emily would try everything she knew, including bottle feedings, to help these fragile lives. The refusal to take food from the syringe led to such high stress that the male kitten had a seizure. In their cozy corner of the heated enclosure, 3 small bobcats huddled together, their once bright eyes dimming as the days passed. On the 4th morning, Emily found herself in her office, her head resting in her hands. The financial reports of the sanctuary lay untouched on her desk, overshadowed by her concerns. This sanctuary meant the world to her. It was built on land she had inherited from her grandfather in the high country of northern Arizona. At nearly 60 years old, her face bore the lines of many rescues and the heartbreaks that came from this work. Her silver hair was tied back in a neat ponytail, and her hands showed the wear of years spent caring for animals. Just then, her granddaughter Lizzie, who was interning at the sanctuary while studying wildlife biology, knocked gently before entering. "I heard you didn't sleep at all last night, Gran," she said, placing a warm mug of coffee on the desk. At 22, Lizzie shared her grandmother's determined green eyes and practical nature. However, she also brought fresh ideas influenced by modern research that Emily hadn't had in her early days. Emily sighed. "Those bobcat babies won't last another day without food. I've tried everything, Lizzie." Lizzie sat on the edge of the desk and considered this. "Not everything, Gran. What about Daisy?" Emily looked up in surprise. "Daisy, she's not even a year old and she's a dog!" "But she's a rescue mutt who just weaned her puppies 3 weeks ago," Lizzie replied, excitement flickering in her eyes. "She's still lactating a bit, and she's so gentle." "It's too risky," Emily started to caution, but Lizzie interrupted her. "Is it more dangerous than letting those kittens starve? You always said that when rehabilitating animals, sometimes you have to consider the unthinkable." Emily paused, memories of her mentor's words rushing back. Sometimes nature needs a little help connecting the dots it wouldn't connect on its own. Dr. Thompson had once told her when they had successfully paired an orphaned hawk chick with a surrogate father. Taking a deep breath, Emily finally said, "Get Daisy. but we need to approach this carefully, very carefully. Daisy had arrived at the sanctuary the previous winter, a pregnant stray found half frozen in a drainage ditch during a rare snowstorm. She was a medium-sized dog with a mix of breeds, likely some golden retriever and shepherd among them. Daisy had soft golden fur and gentle brown eyes that radiated a deep sense of patience. After giving birth to her puppies at a small veterinary clinic in the sanctuary, she proved to be an outstanding mother, with all 6 puppies quickly adopted by loving families in Pine Creek. Daisy quickly became a favorite at the sanctuary, often accompanying Emily as she made her rounds. Her calm demeanor seemed to bring comfort to many of the injured animals in their care. Emily had hoped to find Daisy a forever home once she fully recovered from motherhood, but that plan kept getting postponed. One day, they brought Daisy to a room next to where the Bobcat kittens were being housed. Emily sat on the floor, gently cradling the smallest kitten, a female with a white patched ear wrapped in a soft towel. The kitten's breathing was shallow, and her tiny body felt cool despite the warmth of the heated blanket. "Easy, Daisy," Emily murmured as Lizzie brought the dog in. "Easy, girl." Immediately, Daisy's nose twitched and her ears perked up. She approached slowly, her tail wagging uncertainly. When she reached Emily, she lowered her head and gently sniffed the tiny bundle in the towel. The kitten stirred and let out a small hiss, using up what little energy she had left. Emily held her breath, ready to pull the kitten back at the first hint of aggression from either animal. But what happened next would remain etched in her memory forever. Daisy whined softly, a sound that was hauntingly similar to the one she made when calling for her puppies. She lay down beside Emily, extending her head toward the kitten, and began to lick the tiny creature with tender, motherly strokes. Instead of pulling away as it had done with human touch, the kitten grew still. After a moment, it turned its tiny face toward the warmth and comfort of Daisy's fur. "Oh my," Lizzie whispered, wide-eyed. Tears filled Emily's eyes as she carefully moved the kitten closer to Daisy. The dog curled around the kitten, continuing to groom it as if it were one of her own puppies. "Let's see how she does with the others," Emily suggested softly. One by one, they brought in the other 2 kittens, and the same miracle unfolded. Daisy welcomed each one, gathering them close and showering them with maternal care. Within an hour, all 3 kittens were nestled against her belly, and to Emily's amazement, they began to nurse. "It won't provide ideal nutrition," Emily observed, watching the scene unfold. The Bobcat kittens started out needing extra care. Lizzie knew they might need some formula to help them thrive, but she felt hopeful about the bond they were forming. "Sometimes the best medicine is love," Lizzie said, giving her grandmother's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. Over the next week, something remarkable happened. Under Daisy's attentive care, the kittens began to flourish. They put on weight, their fur became shiny, and their eyes sparkled with curiosity. Daisy was always there, grooming them, gently carrying them back when they wandered off, and giving low growls when their play got a bit too rough. The staff at the sanctuary named the kittens Patch, the female with a white ear, Scout, the bigger male, and Rascal, the smallest, who was quick to explore. Daisy seemed to recognize each of them, responding to their unique personalities and sounds. Emily, the caretaker, documented every moment, capturing photos and videos and taking detailed notes on their growth. She knew this unique situation was exceptional and could provide valuable insights for wildlife rehabilitation. By the time the kittens reached 8 weeks, they had started eating solid food, a special formula mixed with tiny pieces of meat. Even though they slept cuddled against Daisy each night, their play was taking on its own lively character, full of stalking, pouncing, and climbing. Daisy sometimes joined their fun, but mostly acted as a safe haven for them when they got tired or felt unsure. During one of Dr. Rivera's regular visits, Emily shared her observations. "Their wild instincts are developing just fine, and they're exhibiting hunting behaviors on schedule," she reported. Dr. Rivera, who had dedicated much of his life to wildlife medicine, nodded thoughtfully as he examined Scout. "Their physical condition looks great, and there are no signs of them becoming too attached to humans, which is good," he said. "But I'm worried about their bond with Daisy. They will eventually need to be released or moved to a proper facility. They can't stay with a dog forever." Emily had been trying to push this reality from her mind. She recognized the truth in Dr. Rivera's words. The sanctuary aimed to rehabilitate and release animals when possible, and she knew that goal had to be a priority for the Bobcat kittens as well. As they prepared to release the Bobcat cubs, the team needed to find suitable wildlife facilities for them. Even in a sanctuary, keeping wild animals as pets went against everything Emily stood for. "We'll figure it out when the time comes," she remarked as Scout escaped from the examination table, darting back to Daisy, who awaited patiently nearby. For now, she's providing the care they need. Yet, Dr. Rivera had warned that the longer the cubs stayed with Daisy, the tougher it would be for all of them when the time to separate arrived. By 4 months old, the cubs had become the sanctuary's unofficial mascots. Volunteers enjoyed observing them from a safe distance as they practiced their hunting skills, pouncing on fallen leaves and each other's tails. Daisy was still a constant presence in their lives, having shifted from a nurturing mother to a playful guardian. But Emily knew they had to make some decisions soon. The Bobcats were growing quickly, their baby spots were fading, and their striking blue eyes were shifting to the tawny gold typical of mature Bobcats. It wouldn't be long before the cubs would need to start their journey toward independence, a natural process for wild animals. One evening, as Emily and Lizzie sat on the porch of Emily's cabin and watched the sunset turn the ponderosa pines golden, Lizzie mentioned, "We've received interest from the Mountain Wildlife Preserve in Colorado. They have a great habitat for bobcats and an educational program. The three of them could stay together." Emily nodded, though her heart felt heavy. "It's a good option, better than most, but we need to start the separation process soon. We have to get them accustomed to being without Daisy before we move them." The very next day, they tried to begin the separation. While the cubs were enjoying their breakfast, Daisy was moved to Emily's cabin, about a quarter-mile away from the enclosure. The immediate reaction was distressing. Once the cubs realized Daisy was gone, they started pacing anxiously and emitting high-pitched calls that echoed through the sanctuary. They refused food, scratched at the enclosure doors, and huddled together, clearly upset. The most heartbreaking response came from Daisy, who howled mournfully and scratched at Emily's door until her paws were raw. After 4 hours of escalating anxiety, Lizzie concluded, "This isn't working. Their stress levels are too high. Patch hasn't stopped calling since we removed Daisy." Emily watched through the window, feeling the weight of their distress. The smallest bobcat sat in the middle of the enclosure, her head held high, letting out desperate calls for her surrogate mother. "Let's bring Daisy back," Emily agreed, suggesting a slower approach. The reunion was heartfelt for everyone who watched. Daisy burst into the enclosure, and immediately she was surrounded by 3 excited young bobcats. They purred loudly as they rubbed against her, checked her over, and finally curled up next to her in a mix of exhaustion and relief. Emily and Lizzie exchanged worried glances, realizing the bond was stronger than they had anticipated. For the next 2 weeks, they tried different ways to separate them, using shorter separations or keeping them in adjacent enclosures where they could still see each other. But nothing succeeded. The bobcats showed clear signs of sadness when away from Daisy for too long, and Daisy herself began to look anxious. "I've never seen anything like this," Emily shared with Dr. Rivera during a concerned phone call. "It's as if they've forgotten their different species. They formed their own family." Dr. Rivera responded thoughtfully, "Unusual interspecies bonds are not unheard of in captivity. The big question is what's best for their long-term welfare." The situation reached a turning point when the Mountain Wildlife Preserve sent representatives to assess the bobcats for possible transfer. Thomas Wilkins, their head zoologist, observed the unusual family for a full day before sitting down with Emily in her office. "They're beautiful cats and in excellent condition," he noted, flipping through his notes, "but I have serious concerns about separating them from the dog. The stress could lead to setbacks in their development." "So, you won't take them?" Emily asked, feeling both disappointed and relieved. Wilkins stroked his beard, pondering the situation. "I didn't say that. What if we took the dog too?" Emily was taken aback. "You can't be serious. She's a domestic dog. She should be living with people." Leaning forward in his chair, Wilkins suggested, "Our preserve has staff housing on site. One of our senior keepers, Maria, has been looking for a companion animal. What if Daisy lived with her but had daily supervised time with the bobcats? As the cats grow, we could gradually reduce that time, helping them develop independence while minimizing trauma." The idea of separation was new and quite unexpected for Emily. However, as she thought it over, it began to make more sense. The wildlife preserve offered resources and expertise far beyond what her small sanctuary could provide, and this arrangement would prioritize the well-being of all the animals involved. After many discussions with the sanctuary's board and a lengthy video call with Maria, Emily decided to move forward with this unusual plan. The day of departure brought mixed feelings. Emily and Lizzie personally transported the animals to Colorado, riding in a specially equipped van alongside Daisy and the crated bobcats. Sensing that something important was happening, Daisy stayed close to the carriers, occasionally letting out soft whines to comfort her unusual offspring. Upon arriving at the Mountain Wildlife Preserve, Emily was struck by its impressive layout. The facility, set in the breathtaking Colorado Rockies, featured large, naturalistic habitats and a dedicated team of wildlife professionals. Maria, the senior keeper, was a warm and knowledgeable woman in her 30s who quickly made a positive impression on Emily. "They'll have 3 acres of forested habitat," Maria explained, guiding them to the specially prepared enclosure. "This space is designed to encourage natural behaviors while still allowing us to observe and care for them." The bobcats adjusted well to their new surroundings, exploring cautiously with Daisy offering support. By sunset, they were comfortable enough to start climbing the logs and rock formations arranged throughout their habitat, all while Daisy watched closely from below. As night fell and it was time for Daisy to go to Maria's cabin, Emily felt a wave of anxiety. Would the bobcats react with the distress they had shown before during separation? Surprisingly, their response was much milder than she anticipated. They called out for Daisy a few times, but didn't show the extreme anxiety they had displayed in the past. "I think they sense this is different," Maria noted. "This is where they belong, and they understand that Daisy will return." Over the next 6 months, Emily received regular updates and made occasional visits to the preserve. To everyone's relief, the transition had exceeded expectations. The bobcats thrived in their new environment, growing into strong, healthy young adults. Meanwhile, Daisy settled in beautifully with Maria, enjoying the comforts of her new life. As the bobcats grew up, their relationship with Daisy naturally changed. While they still greeted her with enthusiasm on her daily visits, they became more independent, spending time exploring their surroundings and honing their hunting skills. By their first birthday, they had transformed into strong young adults, and their bond with Daisy shifted from one of dependency to a companionship. However, what transpired 18 months later was truly surprising. It started with a concerned phone call from Maria. "Scout is sick, Emily," she said, her voice tight with worry. "Dr. Mendes thinks it's a bacterial infection. He isn't responding to treatment and won't eat." Emily, now 60 and thinking about retirement, felt a wave of sadness. She had always cared deeply for the bobcats and considered them some of the most special cases of her long career. "How serious is it?" she inquired. Maria responded, "Serious enough that we're very worried. Scout has withdrawn to a corner of the quarantine area and won't let anyone near him, not even me." Without hesitation, Emily made the call. "I'm coming, and I'll bring Daisy to see him." The drive to Colorado felt long and heavy. By the time Emily reached the preserve, Scout had been ill for 3 days and was getting weaker despite the medical team's efforts. "We can't get medication into him without sedation, but he's too weak for it," Dr. Mendes explained as they hurried to the veterinary building. "He needs to eat and take oral antibiotics, but he refuses everything." Outside the quarantine room, they found Maria waiting. Daisy was sitting attentively by her side. The dog had aged gracefully, having developed into a cherished companion for both Maria and the bobcats. Though her muzzle showed some white, her eyes sparkled with intelligence. "She knows something's wrong," Maria remarked. "She's been whining to come here since Scout got sick." Peering through the observation window, Emily saw Scout curled up in a corner. His once magnificent coat was dull, and he labored to breathe, appearing smaller and more vulnerable in his sickness. "Let Daisy in," Emily instructed with determination. "Let's see if she can reach him when we can't." They placed a secure harness and leash on Daisy for safety, then carefully opened the door to the quarantine room. Daisy entered slowly, her nose twitching as she took in the scent of her friend. With her ears perked up in concern, Daisy spotted Scout and let out a soft whine of recognition. Scout raised his head weakly, momentarily confused, as if his illness had dimmed his memory. Then he made a small sound, something between a meow and a chuff, a noise Emily had heard many times before when the Bobcats were still kittens greeting their surrogate mother. Daisy, moving gently, approached Scout, disregarding the veterinary team's warnings to be cautious. When she reached him, she lay down beside him and started to groom his face and ears, just as she had done when he was a tiny, orphaned kitten. What happened next left everyone in the room in awe. Scout, who had turned away all food for days, allowed Dr. Mendes to come close with a small bowl of broth that contained dissolved antibiotics. With Daisy by his side, offering comfort and a familiar presence, Scout began to lap weakly at the medicinal broth. "I can't believe it," Dr. Mendes whispered. For the next 3 days, Daisy seldom left Scout's side. She slept next to him, encouraged him to eat, and seemed to provide a strength that no medicine could match. When Patch and Rascal were briefly allowed to visit their brother, it created a scene that brought tears to Emily's eyes. 3 grown Bobcats and their canine surrogate mother reunited in a time of need. Scout's recovery was slow but consistent. By the end of the week, he was eating regularly and showing more energy. The infection seemed to respond to the antibiotics, and his prognosis shifted from cautious to hopeful. "It's remarkable," Dr. Mendes told Emily as they watched Scout take his first short walk around the quarantine enclosure, with Daisy walking patiently beside him. "I've worked with wildlife for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this." To which Emily replied, "Love transcends species," as she reflected on all the wonders she had witnessed over her decades in wildlife work. When Scout was well enough to return to the main habitat, Maria suggested something unusual. "I think Daisy should go with him, just for today, to help him settle back in with his siblings." Given the extraordinary circumstances, the preserve's director agreed, with careful supervision. Daisy accompanied Scout back to the habitat where Patch and Rascal were waiting. Emily, watching from the observation deck, would never forget what she saw that day as they entered together. In the enclosure, the 3 Bobcats came together, creating a lovely scene filled with purrs and gentle head bumps. It seemed almost choreographed, yet it was completely natural. They gathered around Daisy, their surrogate mother, each finding a spot beside her, just like when they were kittens. For a few minutes, this unusual family, made up of wild and domestic animals, simply enjoyed each other's presence in perfect harmony. Their bond, formed in a time of need, was nurtured by what could only be described as love. "This is why I've dedicated my life to this work," Emily said softly to Lizzie, who had flown in when she learned about Scout's illness. It was moments like these that reminded them healing could come in the most unexpected ways. As time passed, Daisy's relationship with her Bobcat family continued to grow. While the Bobcats matured and needed her constant presence less, their bond remained strong. Daisy, now older yet still spry, made her daily visits to them, transitioning more into a friend than a mother, but still playing an important role in their well-being. The sanctuary and preserve even collaborated on a paper discussing this remarkable case, offering valuable insights into wildlife rehabilitation. Emily, who eventually retired at 65, often shared this story in her lectures to aspiring wildlife rehabilitators. "Sometimes the most powerful medicine isn't found in a syringe or during surgery," she would explain, displaying images of Daisy and her Bobcat family over the years. "Sometimes it's about connection, meeting a need so fundamental that it crosses the lines we believe exist between species." On quiet evenings, Emily would visit the preserve to see the animals that had reshaped her understanding of possibilities. She would find Daisy there, now elderly but still devoted, sitting peacefully near the habitat fence, with the 3 adult Bobcats lounging nearby. Their familial bond endured against all odds, proving that what logic said should create distance could instead bring them closer together. Emily would sometimes reflect on her initial worries when Lizzie first suggested this unlikely pairing. The unthinkable, she would murmur, realizing that sometimes the unthinkable is exactly what's needed. In the warm glow of evening light, wild and domestic, rescuer and rescued, they remained a family, in every sense of the word, a living example of love's extraordinary ability to heal without boundaries.